Now, before you bring out the pitchforks, just give me about 20 minutes of your time so I can explain exactly what I mean by the title and thumbnail of this video. Because no, this isn't clickbait. And yes, I really do believe that by its very definition and the inherent benefits that are acquired by the one who has the user status in a relationship, Mel wasn't actually the one who was the user in their relationship. Jayce was. And over the next 20 minutes, I will go into full detail as to how I arrived at that point. And after I'm done, you can let me know in the comments if I was able to make a compelling point with that regard. Deal? Now, before I start yapping on, I would like to point out something I always say in these videos. Media analysis is just that. We are trying to understand the messages present within the media we are interacting with and discussing. And because we all bring our own biases and thoughts to the process, it means that we can all have different takeaways from whatever it is that we've watched or read or played. Because, yes, I do also make videos about character analysis in video games on this channel. So, therefore, please note that everything I am saying is my opinion. You don't need to agree with me, but please don't be an ass in the comments. You can make your points without being insulting. Opinions, after all, are like assholes. Everyone's got one. This just happens to be mine. And with that said, let's talk about my claim that Mel wasn't the user in the relationship and how that honor instead should go to Jayce. Because the amount of threads and think pieces I've seen of people writing about how manipulative Mel was and how she's self serving, which always makes me smile, by the way, because Arcane is chock full of people who are all about their self interest. It is a very human trait after all. The reason why you clicked on this video is because I piqued your interest. And you're either ready to hear me validate your opinions on Mel Medarda, or are waiting to make a counter argument to my point. Either way, it serves you to be here watching this video, and it serves me to have you watch this video. That's how life and social interactions work. Even in Arcane, sure, there might be altruistic reasons for Victor, for example, wanting to help people in the Undercity. But the reason why he is so driven to take that stance is because he is from the Undercity. And so he takes particular interest in helping others from his city who have had to deal with similar experiences and societal ills that all of them, as people of Zorn, have always experienced at the hands of those in Piltover. It is in Vander's self-interest to maintain an agreement with Grayson, so that things never dissolve into pure anarchy between Zorn and Piltover, so he can protect his family. Of course, there's no need to talk about why Silco does what he does, and hell, Even at the end, when he realizes that he will willingly give up something he's been fighting for, something he's just about killed his childhood friend for, all for the sake of keeping Jinx safe and not wanting to hand her over to Jayce and Piltover. That was him being selfless, yes, and also serving his interest, because at that point, all that mattered to him was keeping Jinx safe. Hell, Heimerdinger reticence in trying to keep magic out of Piltover as a result of what he had witnessed of worlds destroyed by, to him, at the time, magic, was what drove his objection of Jayce's initial pursuit of X-Core. Heimerdinger would rather that Piltover remain as is and people not have the aid that magic would have provided them, for his fear of what the future would hold, which in turn is very limiting to the quality of life that everyone should ideally have. He was so focused on his own history and his own fears that he never really got the chance to provide the guidance or give the needed information and support that would have helped ease certain outcomes, if only he had gotten fully on board much earlier. Jayce's interest in the S-Core is driven by him wanting to help the everyday person in Piltover and making life easier for them. He's not just doing it because of his love for science, it's also so that it can serve a purpose. And that purpose starts to shift when he realizes that it can also help save Victor. So every time I see this comment about how Mel is self-serving, it always makes me laugh because, duh. Yes, she is. Everyone is. That is how life works. Human beings have desires that we want met. And this applies to relationships as well. The reason why it keeps being brought up in couples therapy, that relationship, a healthy one, is about a give and take, is because we all enter said relationships with expectations of what we hope to gain from them. Companionship, love, understanding, empathy, a support system, someone who understands what we want and can encourage us to chase those dreams, someone we get to celebrate our wins and mourn our losses with. There is a perpetual give and take in relationships. That is what makes them healthy. Now, if we've established that everyone in Arcane was driven by their own interests, except maybe Vi, and yes, I do intend to make a video about Violet and the burden of sisterhood sometime in the future. But as I was saying, now that we've established that everybody in Arcane is driven by their individual interests, which for Mel is to help restore her honor as a Medarda, grow her family's wealth, look out for Medarda's interest in Piltover, and thus prove to her mother that she is worthy of the name. And for Jayce is to prove his theory about magic being something that can be created with the help of science, aimed at helping the lives of everyday people. Then we can start to look at their relationship and how those interests and others that they never actually went looking for were served and met. Because Mel's actual first interaction with Jayce outside of the council meeting, where he had been put on a sort of quasi trial to state his case and hopefully get the council to release him, was when Jayce and Victor snuck into the council quarters, specifically Imerdinger's laboratory, so they can test out Victor's theory about how best to stabilize the crystals. A situation that would have had them be caught by the patrolling guards if Mel hadn't gotten there first, listened to Jayce's spiel, and conceded to giving him the benefit of the doubt that would give him the time and space to test out his theory. Now, some would look at that scene and state that it showed how Mel was already thinking about how Jayce's research, should it succeed, would benefit her. And I've pointed to that being the start of Mel using Jayce in their relationship. And to that I would say, if Jayce hadn't made his plea to Mel, neither he nor Victor would have gotten the chance to test out their theory. Yes, Mel was already calculating how Jayce would serve her interest. But in that moment, Jayce also realized how Mel could help he and Victor achieve their goal without any interruption. Which she did by diverting the attention of the guard that would have certainly caught them and thus prevented their breaking. In that situation, they both used each other, and Jayce's theory was right. With Victor's help, he was able to stabilize the crystal, an act that brought Heimerdinger running back to the laboratory to see it all in action. And even with that, Heimerdinger would have still shut down Jayce's work, if not for Mel stepping in to confirm that her hunch was right. And she therefore pushed for the council to be the one who gets to make that decision. And thus, Hextech was born. It revolutionized trade and travel within Piltover, turning the city into the hub of commerce, thus improving the lives of everyone within its walls. Except for the Zonites, of course. Now, usually, when the conversation arises about users in a relationship, we often classify them as the one in the relationship who is always taking, but rarely ever gives back. Some would also define them as the one who seemed to gain the most within said relationship compared to their partner. And that is where I personally find the discourse of Mel Medarda as the one who used and manipulated sweet, innocent Jayce so very interesting. Because I look at that and I wonder, with most cases of manipulation, it is often done in order for the person who is doing said manipulation to get what they want, often to the detriment of the person they are manipulating. Case in point, Ambessa's manipulation of Caitlyn so she can get power, access and control and establish her Noxian forces in Piltover. That is a clear case of manipulation. And we can clearly see who benefited the most in that regard. Now, is there another conversation to be had about the racial dynamics and bias inherent in having darker skin than Bessa, be the one to manipulate poor, sweet, innocent cop Caitlin, who is much lighter skinned, and how a lot of fandom discourse have been trying to strip Kate of all her wrongdoings and laying them firmly at the feet of Ambessa, thus stripping her, Caitlin, of any sort of agency and accountability. Yeah. But we aren't going to do that in this video. No. This video is focused on Mel. And so I will like to ask, did Mel Medarda get what she wanted? Did she benefit from her partnership with Jayce or from her using him in this case? Yes, she did. We can say that she did get monetary gains from Hextech and the opportunities it brought Piltover. But that is the thing. All the counselors benefited. At the Opera House, where Mel tries to explain how Jayce has put a target on his own back because his stringent anti-corruption policies meant that his plans were messing with the pockets and monies of all the counselors, who are now most likely thinking of him, Jayce in this case, as a shared enemy. I've seen people point out the scene as one where Mel is manipulating Jayce to her benefit, and I always smile at that. Because the scene is also read as the one thing, the one situation that Jayce doesn't want to be put into. Is to be read as a shared enemy by all the counselors. Maybe Mel benefited monetarily from her getting Jayce to loosen the ropes a bit, but Jayce also benefited in that he got to keep his neck. He gets to keep his life. Because if anybody legit thinks that politicians, government officials who believe that somebody, specifically one of their own, is standing in the way of their money and potentially, possibly, could push them into debt, would not do anything to remove said thorn from their side, then you don't know a lot about politics. It is a messy business. But I'm sure some of you are about to say, but Noria, the only reason why Jayce had to take on a political position is primarily because of Mel. If she hadn't pushed him to, he wouldn't have done so. To which I still point out that Jayce still benefited from that too. Act 2 of Season 1 starts with Progress Day. Hextech has grown beyond what everyone could have envisioned back when Jayce and Victor's sole plan was to figure out a way to stabilize the crystals. But that was years ago. Now, Piltover is a thriving metropolis because of its boost in status as a trade port and center of technologies, thanks to Hextech. Which is why Jayce has become elevated as someone everyone in Piltover, and one would assume outside of it as well, refers to as the man of progress. Which, quick point, one can assume puts Jayce at a slightly elevated position in the eyes of the people and those with such interest compared to Mel. Yes, Mel Medarda still knows how to work the room and wine and dine them, but the one every eye turns to the minute he steps into the fundraiser venue is Jayce Tallis. Even with that, we see subtle hints that Jayce is already being afforded more power than Mel. Now, some would point Mel's conversation with Jayce at her fundraiser on Progress Day, where she tries to convince him that he's Piltover's future and should share the plans that it has for Hextech's future with everyone who's come to Piltover for the Progress Day celebration, as her trying to manipulate him in sharing his latest invention with the eye of serving our own interest. And to that, I would say that thought process is one that would still have benefited them both. Yes, Mel will be able to get an idea of what the next stage is, and I would help contribute to the Medarda's coffers, but Jayce would also get the chance to share his and Victor's plans with the rest of the world. Something that Heimerdinger doesn't want them to. Which is why it isn't just Mel who was disappointed when Jayce decided to listen to Heimerdinger and not say anything about what Hextech 2.0 would look like. Victor was also disappointed because those plans were to serve both his and Jayce's dream as well. The constant narrative to paint Mel as this villainous love interest who was selfish and only wanted things for herself, like none of her plans benefited Jayce in equal measure, always astounds me. Her moving the pieces to have Jayce be gifted a seat at the council serves her interest, yes, but it also serves Jayce's interest as a scientist who should advocate for his work being able to be used the way it was designed to. And who prior to that moment didn't have that power. Heimerdinger being ousted is a sad turn of events, yes, but he's also someone who has served on the Piltover Council for centuries, has become set in his ways, and is deathly terrified of what progress would be for fear of the disastrous consequences that would follow. And yet, he is also someone who has done absolutely nothing about Zorn to help the plight of the people in the Undercity, the place from which his former assistant Victor came from. He knew where to go find Victor when the latter was caught up in his thoughts and processing his imminent death. Hell, he found his way to Echo, so it's not like Heimerdinger didn't know. He just did not care. Jayce was right to call that out. Did Jayce weaponize it to serve his purpose? Yes, but was he right? Yes. And in that situation, was that all Jayce? Yes. So why exactly do people insist on taking away his agency and blame all of that on Mel like she wrote his speech or something? Now, if I was to use the misogynoir card, a lot of people would say, come on, Noria, that's not the case. But please tell me what else applies to a situation where a black woman is so villainized and her male partner is stripped of all agency and any role he actively played in situations that benefited both of them within their relationship. Jayce becomes head of the council, a position of immense power, by virtue of Mel pushing and prodding him into things, yes, but he accepts that mantle. He benefits from that mantle. And now I ask myself, who benefited the most from their relationship? Mel Medarda, who increased her family's wealth in Piltover, or Jayce Tallis, who went from the poor scholar sponsored by the Kiramans to having House Tallis granted a seat on the council and then becomes the head of the council. I've even seen people bring up Mel's push for Jayce to use Hextech to create weapons for Piltover against Zon's impending assault for the city's protection, as an instance of her trying to get her hands on Hextech weaponry, and thus another way in which she wants to use Jayce for her own ends. And thus they blame her for Hextech weaponry being used against the people of Zon. And I'm just over here baffled, because people are being so disingenuous in that regard. The person who wants to use Hextech weaponry is Ambessa, not Mel. Mel is the one who, after the attack on the council, is pushing for there being no need for Hextech weaponry to be levied against the people of Zon. The person who yanked the rug from underneath her feet was Jayce, who actually created those weapons and put them in the hands of Kathleen Kiraman, her band of enforcers, with Ambessa's Noxian force firmly behind them. I think a lot of people are stuck on Jayce's accusation of Mel when she returns from her kidnapping by the Black Rose and her discovering her long dormant powers as a mage, that Mel saw him and Victor as an investment because that was what she told him lying. And sure, she did make that statement, but I repeat, theirs was a mutually beneficial relationship. Jayce is spiraling at that point because of the threat that Victor is becoming and needs someone to blame and lash out at, and Mel was there. But ultimately, she might have saw him as an investment at first, and sure, she got her returns on said investment, but Jayce also got her support as an investor, which served him well too. When people throw around the word user, they often refer to the person in the relationship who keeps gaining things to the detriment or as opposed to their partner. To claim that Mel is the user in their relationship speaks to an imbalance in the benefits accrued in her relationship with Jayce. But if one party ends up in a much better place than the other, then clearly the one who gained the most is the one who is the user in said relationship by that logic, right? Which wouldn't be Mel, but Jayce, wouldn't it? But that's me. What about you? What are your opinions on the matter? Do drop them in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed what I had to say. Share this video if you think others would like it too. It all helps my channel grow and is incredibly supportive of my content. Speaking of support, a huge thank you to my Patreons, who are now officially my port in the storm now that your girl is unemployed. They help me keep the lights on, and for that I will always be grateful. If you like to support me on Patreon and can afford to do so, I know how hard things are for us all economically, all around the globe. The link to my Patreon is in the description box. You will have my eternal gratitude. For real. Nothing is too small. Now that I am unemployed, I might be making even more videos than my 3 times a week usual upload. So keep an eye out for that. Okay? Until Friday's video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.